fire. I'm God, bitch.
Look up in the sky, is that a goon or green goblin? None of the above, it's a motherfucking dragon. Super Saiyan 2 to a cell, no problem. You put me in a cell, then you got
Bow down, nigga, I'm God, nigga.
What's up, world? It's your boy Troy, and we are going to talk about reparations and why it might actually be the worst thing for black people. So let me get in. I just feel like I gotta dive into it. One of the first reasons why I feel that reparations is not suitable for black people is not because I'm some kind of Uncle Tom. It's not because I am unsympathetic to slaves or the plight of slavery or whatever. In fact, I'm very aware. I've read dozens, if not hundreds, of books on the subject. I've read many slave narratives. I've done my work. I've done my research. I've had mentors that have wrote books on the subjects. I've had professors, Africana professors that were mentors and everything to me. And even then, I'm going against a lot of what they think and feel about what reparations is. And I gotta give my objective feedback and opinion. And through this little discourse, I'm going to attempt to explain why reparations is bad, but I'm also going to give a key as to how the situation can be fixed, how things can be remedied, and I'm going to give some historic inputs and insights to help back these up, right? So first of all, if you don't know, reparations is if someone does something bad to somebody else, the party that did the bad thing must make amends for that. That's not the Webster's dictionary. You can go and look up whatever you got to, but that'll be our working definition for right now. So based on that, let's ask ourselves, who is the perpetrating party is the question. Obviously a lot of blacks, or should I say the narrative is white people, which we've all heard the counter arguments and rebuttals before. Well, blacks sold other whites into slavery, and blacks owned slaves too, and the Irish were slaves too, and they were actually the first slaves, and then the Indians were slaves, and then black people, and then everything. Which, okay. Now here's where I feel like I'm gonna make a case for reparations, but I just need to debunk some shit real quick. Yes, it is true that a lot of Africans did indeed sell rival Africans into slavery. Yes, it is true that, a lot of these things did happen. But to that point, I would say that you misunderstand what Africans thought slavery was as opposed to what Europeans thought slavery was. Right, for instance, let's say that we have two rival schools, right? We have East High and we have West High. And, let's say that they have a football game or whatever, and the losing team, they get a prank done on them, right? And we think that we know what a prank is, maybe toilet paper or, maybe a little spray paint or something like that. We understand what a prank is, at least we think we do. But let's say, was it West High, whatever, beats East High, and they're like, all right, we get to do a prank. And then, so that's that Friday night. Monday morning they come in and East High is just leveled. There's just nothing there. It's obliterated. It's gone. And then, the people from, East High, they're like, well, wait a minute, what happened? They're like, haha, we pranked you. And it's like, No, oh my God. Like, if I knew that was going to be the result, I would have never agreed to that. It's the same thing. So yes, Africans did have slaves. Yes, it is true. Africans did sell other Africans into slavery. But at the same time, let's understand two things. First of all, Africans had a different system of slavery, right? It wasn't about, if you were a slave under in an African society, you were allowed to be a human being. You had rights. There was like limits on it. You were allowed to keep your family. You know, there was a way for you to get out of slavery. Like, in some cases, slavery was not. In some cases, right? I don't want to go too deep, but it was a wanted position. It's not a. It wasn't anything like it is now. And let's also try to realize that when Europeans came over, they never came over and said, we're going to abuse slaves, da 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 da. No, they came over with the good book. They came over with the Bible, carried them off on the good ship Jesus. So they're coming saying, hey, you just get them, you give them to us. We're God's people. We're going to make sure that we take care of them and this and that. So look, you give us the slaves, we're going to give you, rum or guns or whatever it is, whatever destructive thing that we want to give to you that you want to fuck around with. We'll do that. So it's not like Africans were sitting there like, all right, we're just going to send them out and you guys are going to get fucked over. They're like, no, it seems like a pretty decent deal for all of us, even if I was the one that was selling some Africans into slavery. If I would have known that what they were going to go through when they got there, or the conditions on the ships and things of that nature, I wouldn't make the deal, right? But there's still nuances, everything to that. But I want to stick to the topic of reparations for right now, right? So obviously, Africans get on the ships. We all know the atrocities that happened. We all know all the And so another point that I need to address that almost seems like I'm actually giving rise for the need for reparations is that in a weird way everybody else got reparations, right? I understand, when the Irish were slaves, well, they've been fully restored right now. There is no effects. If you're an Irish person, there is no effects that you feel from any of the limited number of your ancestors being enslaved. You don't feel it. It's not. I'm sorry. And if you do, then I just gotta say, stop being so sensitive, right? Even then, when we look at a lot of the things that happened with the Indians, like at least they have land, they have reservations, now obviously that's a whole can of worms in and of itself that I don't want to get into. And even then, I'm Indian as well myself. Like, my grandmother is fully 100% Indian. So, and a lot of my family is too. So, yeah, that's a part of me as well but I still have to be objective here. So, like, the only people within that group that hasn't had something specifically made for them is black people. Now, a lot of you may say, well, what about welfare, right? Well, what about what's the other thing? Well, let's talk about welfare. First of all, welfare. When we talk about government benefits, government programs, they benefit white people on a much greater scale than they do black people. And welfare wasn't originally intended for blacks. It was really meant for poor whites, like the poor white trash that every other white person doesn't really want to assimilate. It was really made for them, but during the course of being, blacks kind of we get our little cut of the pie as well. But even then, when we look at something like the Homestead Act, or we look at I think I got that right. It's something that's the Birthright. I think it was the Birthright Act, where pretty much if you're in England or you're in Europe, you can just come on over and you got your acres, you got tools to work the fields, you got everything you wanted. When we look at when the GI Bill first came out, it overwhelmingly benefited whites than it did blacks. Like, there were tons of programs, trillions of dollars that went into building up the white middle class that everybody else, particularly blacks, were completely excluded from. So then we look at something like affirmative action. Now, Dr. Claude Anderson, one of the people that I think he wrote the bill, you can look up some of his work. He says that even he is incensed at what's going on with affirmative action, because it got changed from just black people to everybody. So let's say that I have a big old corporation or whatever, and I gotta hire people or whatever, and I'm a white guy and I'm hiring mainly white guys, and then they say, well, affirmative action. Okay, you just gotta hire someone that doesn't embody your demographics. So they say, okay, well, black guy, black woman, white one. We'll take the white woman. Right? So because things got changed from just black to being the minority within the group, right? So they say, and being a woman, being a female is a demographic, they say, well, okay, fine, cool. We'll put you in here. White women have benefited a lot more from that bill than anybody else. Now, some things got changed, but at the same time, when we talk about the civil rights bill, the things like it's not something that, I'll say in a weird way, helped us. It's something that barely got us to ground zero. Right, barely got us to the starting line. There is no makeup for anything that happened, right? But here's the reasons why reparations is bad. First of all, to try and put, we're talking about just gut emotions, morals right here. You can't put a price on the atrocities that was committed to Africans. You can't put a price on that. Like, if someone were to come and just, like, let's say you have a kid and someone were to just rip your kid from you, right? Or if, as a man, somebody came in, raped your wife, said you're no longer married, took your wife and took your kids, and then somewhere down the line, they're like, okay, well, you know what? Well, here's $1 million for that. I mean, in a weird way, it's like you'd almost be a punk for accepting it. It just as a moral, and even then, even for the ones that weren't treated so bad, that but at the same time, like, European slavery is still European slavery. You're still less than a even then. I mean, I guess maybe that's a good part to put in the for a reason for why reparations should be good. But I know I'm doing a little sidetrack right here, but hell, it's in the fucking Constitution, right? 40 acres and a mule. It's literally in the thing that they say this is what our country is built on. Like, at first it was your 3/5, and now, oh shit, we fucked up. Here's your reparations, and you know what? No, that's not gonna happen. So yeah, if you're a person and you think that that's what we're owed, then you are absolutely correct. And I'm still gonna build up to why it's not that. It's still not a good thing. So even then, and we talk about even the moral aspect of everything that's happened. It's tough. It really is tough. I think the second thing is, who gets it? Who really would get reparations? Would it be if you're just any black person? If you're any person, like, what percentage of black would you need to be? And at the same time, we have people that come over from Africa. We have people that come over from the Dominican Republic and everything like that, and they look black. And I guess technically they are here because of their African ancestry. Just they just got off quicker than we did, right? But in essence, who gets it? And what do we get exactly? For like what's the price and what do we get? I mean, when we look at the actual nuts and bolts of how things would come into being, it's very difficult to try to puzzle. It's very difficult. And another thing is, who are we taking it from? I mean, let's say that, and this is under the auspices that reparations is what we think it is, where black people just get a check, right? In essence, well, okay, if it is what it is and I get a check or whatever, then it comes from the taxpayers. But as an American citizen, I pay taxes. So if I'm paying taxes and I'm getting what? Do you kind of see the cycle here? So I'm still paying on the thing that I'm getting from the taxpayer, like in a weird way, right? It's a weird loop. I could probably word it a lot better, but then you say, well, it could be tax free. It's a tax free thing, and then I'd say, well, nothing is really tax-free because I'd still get the money. I still end up spending it. That's still going to get taxed somehow, regardless of what I spend it on. And then you're telling me that prices wouldn't go up on things that are targeted to black people? Like, I don't know how much hair or Remy or whatever the fuck that is. I don't know how much that costs, but if reparations was handed out the way that people wanted it to, yeah, the everything is gonna go up, particularly for the things that involve black people. At the same time, another reason why prices would increase on pretty much everything is because, like I say, where do you think it's coming from? People are getting taxed. Well, who do you think is getting taxed more than anybody? Who do you think is getting? It's the people that own businesses. It's the people that are business owners. So at the same time, when they get taxed, they have to raise prices. So now everybody has to pay a little bit more. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, even from an economic standpoint, it's still not that advantageous, right? And then again, you ask, well, who owes it? Who are we going to, in essence, take this money from? And then the thing is to say, well, white people, they're responsible. And okay, well, and I understand if this offends, but let's look at this thing objectively here. Objectively speaking, and here's where a lot of those whiny ass white boys are right. Where they say, well, technically I can't, my answer. That's a horrible white boy voice. But when they say, should somebody be responsible for the sins of their fathers or forefathers? Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe they should. I can't tell you. One thing I can say is that even then, on the whole, most white people didn't own slaves. It's just an objective fact. I mean, even then, if the country is split between North and South, then, that means half of the country was in the North, didn't participate, didn't, whatever, and then we have the half in the South that did, and even then, that was with people who were pretty wealthy. With most of them not being that wealthy. So even then, even when we look in the South, most white people didn't have slaves. So even then, should it be fair to even then, like I would feel uncomfortable with having a tax, like if you fill out your census and you check white, then now we have to tax you more for something that you might not have really any real connection to. And then, well, what about the whites that have came in after slavery and their families and so forth and so on? And an argument can be raised that, look, when we go, like, look, if you were to move to Germany, I think they have a tax to help pay for the reparations to Jews, right? So if you go to Germany and you live there, I mean, you don't even bitch about it. You don't even say, well, I'm not a Nazi and I never did this to anybody and I never killed any Jews. Why do I gotta pay the tax? Like, you understand what happens and you would just pay the tax. I mean, that's just the way it works. And it can kind of happen here too, but, you know, at the same time, I mean, look at Germany's economy. And it's not just because the taxing of the Jews, or I don't want any white supremacists, you know, using me as a reference or whatever, but that's not the best system at all. I mean, even then, like I say, how does it work? Where's the money going to come from? We're already, was it 20 trillion in debt? We're already 20 trillion in debt. I mean, we already don't have money. I mean, we are, even then, every dollar, it's all coming from the Federal Reserve, which is it's not a government entity. It's a private entity. That's a whole thing. I can go, that's a whole nother video, but I mean, our money isn't even money. I mean, this is another reason why, on the whole, no one really gives a shit that Harriet Tubman gets on a $20 bill, because it's just paper. It's not even real money. And I mean, even then, now that the value of the dollar has decreased by I don't know how much, but it certainly has decreased over the years and over the decades. Now that $20 it's not even worth $20. I mean, so now you want to get, like, as a black person that really is for reparations, you want to get paid in something that literally means nothing, that morally isn't right on so many fronts to begin with. I think we're talking about the the economics of it all. When we talked about how money's not even worth anything anymore, on the whole, right? There's a lot to cover there, but I guess you can do your own research or just trust me on this, but, you know, your dollar doesn't stretch as much as it should or, you know, used to. So, like I said, to rehash, it's just, you want to get paid with something that isn't even worth what it should be worth. Like, now we go back to the moral aspect. It's devaluing it's devaluing, you know, an African American's ancestors' plight. Like, literally, it literally devalues it. You know, and there's other different ways that I can try to describe it, but I mean, even then, now when we talk about economics, but let's kind of switch over to just pure financials and how this would work, right? Because now, not only would you have to go back during that time and, you know, do we quantify things based on what things were at that time or what they are now? Because back then there was no overtime. You got up at the crack of dawn, you worked until everything was done, or until the sun went down, and that could be a 12-hour day, it could be 18-hour day. Like, it could be something that is just, you know, so do we pay him for like the first 8 hours and then the next 8 is overtime, and then, okay, well, what's a wage? And here's the thing, we still don't know. Do you pay him minimum wage or below minimum wage? And then people are saying, well, shit, we should raise minimum wage. So what is the minimum wage? What should the minimum wage what should the minimum wage, what should it have been then? And now we need to adjust for inflation, because if the minimum wage back then was 10 cents a day and now it's you know what, $9, $10, $11 an hour, whatever it is, right? And people are saying, well, you know, still more. Then, you know, now it's like we got to go back and pay them accordingly. And also, you know, in essence, what slaves did what? Because there was a lot of slaves that people think that, oh, they just worked the fields. Well, yeah, there's some slaves did that. Some slaves were actually, you know, that they used, I mean, how do I put it? They did a lot of, I'll say, clerical work. You know, the ones, not everyone that was able to read or write got their eyes burned out or whatever. Like, some of them were used to do some, I'll say, high profile type work. Some of them were involved in construction, doing government projects. I mean, the White House was kind of built by black people. I mean, it you know, I mean, now do we pay them according to the minimum wage then? Or, you know, if you're doing construction now, some people, they get like $50 an hour or whatever to do construction stuff. So are we going to pay, is that going to be what it, excuse me, I'm just, let me get some coffee real quick. Shit, maybe that's why I'm a little hoarse. Maybe I need to get some water. But, you know, how does it work? When we adjust for inflation, how does this work? How does the math work out? And then not only that, but, you know, why not? Interest, right? I mean, if you said, I'm going, especially if it's in the Constitution, if you said, we're going to give you this by this time never comes, or well, you know, the time comes and I don't get what I need, well, then you got to pay up. You know, I mean, there's got to be some kind of interest. I mean, now, so what does the interest be? What should the percentage be? And I mean, even then, so we talked about a lot of the government programs that assisted white people. Well, where did those come from? A lot of that revenue came from black people, from our tax contributions. So in a weird way, a lot of the white middle class, it was built in many ways, and this is one of the ways, was built on the backs of black people. So now how do we quantify what those taxes were, how much they are? I mean, how do we give it back? I mean, there's a lot of math, and at the same time, I'm not a mathematician. So there probably is somebody out there that can really get into the numbers and statistics and analyze all this other stuff. Then if you're that person, then I'd like to have a conversation with you. I'd like to know, because I don't think that this is something that can feasibly be done. Another reason why I feel reparations isn't the best idea, and so, I mean, because we talked about who is at fault here. Is it necessarily white people? At the same time, yes, there were Moors, black people that did own slaves and all that other stuff, but why did they own slaves, and how was it possible? How are they able to do what they were able to do? Well, they were able to do what they were able to do because of government policies. They were able to do what they do because it was written in law. You know, once the laws change, then, you know, and I don't want to go into the whole Civil War thing. We'll just blank sheet, right? But when laws change, behavior changes. So, you know, we're not necessarily banging on white people. It's more about the government, which is the government mainly made up of white people. I get the logical circular arguments here. Just fuck with me here. Let's roll. But let's be honest. Let's be 100% honest here. Do we really trust government? Do we really trust government to do something right? Do we really trust government to do something fair? Do we really trust government? I mean, literally, we're just coming out of an election in which nobody trusts anybody. Everybody hates everything. So you want these people to be in charge. of handling money. Like literally, when you pay your taxes, even and a lot of that grant money. Like let's say that a nonprofit agency gets like $100,000 in grants, well, from the government, which is fine. But the government agency that runs all that, to do all that, like the $100,000 that they got, the agency itself got like $900,000, maybe $1 million. Right? So every time that government sets up a program or something like that, that means that they have to increase the size of government, meaning government gets more money. So whatever, like, so when we talk about reparations, even if I got $1 million check from everybody else's tax money, including my own, then that means the government itself got like 10 million, like whatever the number is. What we do know is that, you know, what gets trapped in government gets trickled down into everybody else, right? I mean, because so if you're working for, like, you know, you got to pay employees, got to keep the lights on, you got to do all this other stuff, and then all that gets true. So you really want this government to handle, you want it to get bigger and to handle reparations? Really? That's like the last thing that you, me, or anybody wants. I mean, think about it this way. When I think of government, many times I think of the DMV, because the DMV is government. The DMV, think about the government as DMV with guns, okay? So you really want the DMV, like even then, you can, how much do you hate the DMV? You go in, even if you got your paperwork filled out, you got your money, everything's good to go, like you just, all you gotta do is go in, sign your papers, and you can just be out. How many times have you been sitting there for an hour or 2 hours, and when it comes to your personal line of business, it only takes like 2 minutes. You want these people, you want the DMV to handle your money, black people. Our money, like reparations. You want these people, these unmotivated, okay, I was gonna say uneducated. They're educated, right? Government schools or whatever. Like they're educated, right? But unmotivated, just clusterfuck of an agency that they put together, and you want these people. I don't even want them handling like the registration for my car, let alone any type of significant amount of money that they need to divvy out to people. I mean, these are the same people that, you know, like the IRS, they got a tax code, like, I don't even know. If we were to, it'd be books like this high full of tax codes, and it would be like this much higher with reparations, and you want these people to handle financials in one way or another for you? I don't think so. But hopefully you're starting to come around, starting to see a little bit of what I'm talking about. Even if it is due for black people, it's not something that I feel would be very feasible, for one, and for two, it's something that I guess it's the same point, it's not feasible. Well, no, for two, it's just not moral, but on so many fronts. But we left off when we're talking about the DMV, the government, the IRS, and also in order for this to become, think about the process that it takes. It's got to get through Congress, it's got to go through the House of Representatives, it's got to go through the Senate, it's got to be signed off by Donald Trump. Okay. All right. So at least not for these next 4 years, we won't get it. But Oh shit! Well, it's not funny. But so it's got to go through these processes. We've already seen what would happen, what could happen when something is put in place that is designed to assist black people and only black people, right? When we talk about affirmative action, something that was written by a black person for the benefit of black people, and somehow everybody else benefits from it more than we are. I mean, honestly, like, since affirmative action, I think, like, literally, the bill was written by a black man, and black males have less jobs than we had since, like, the conception of the bill. But at the same time, and I'm not hating on anybody, like, it is what it is, but because of that bill, disabled people are doing good, black women are doing a lot better in many sectors than black men are. Hispanics, white women, like what? That was a weird way. That's a weird way of saying white. Hard T, white women. I'm gonna stop saying it like that. That makes me feel uncomfortable. If that made you feel uncomfortable, I'm sorry. But it's like, so we're gonna put in a reparations bill. What's to say anybody else from stepping forward and saying, well, hey, well, we were wrong too. We need reparations. We do, and we need it. So let's get in on the bill. And the way things work now, no politician is gonna sit there and say, like, I'm gonna do this just for black people. That's not the way this shit works. It's not the way this happens. I mean, even if we look at a lot of the social movements, a lot of them, they take their page right out of the black playbook, right? I mean, the protests that we see are the same. A lot of even then, I mean, when we look at trans people and gay people and, a lot of other socioeconomic categories of people, a lot, like, when it comes to something, they always say, oh, well, it's just like it was for blacks back in the day, right? Or just like it was just the same way for African Americans. That's the way it is for us now. And then there's always that debate. There's always that something. So, like, honestly, in this country, what can be done that would just benefit black people? And on the whole, let's be honest. If you're a I gotta be objective, and it kind of hurts me to say this for myself. But let's think about it this way. What is it that currently, right? What is it that black people have that a politician would want? I mean, they're already in the cycle of promising us things, and then when they get in, they don't do it. If they get our vote, if we go out to vote, I understand that even then, on the whole, we have a large economic base, even though it's spread out and it goes towards pretty much every other race besides our own. But there's not an organized thing that black people in its current state can offer that would be now, I would say a benefit or use, but that can really help the process move along. I mean, even then, if we think about how things like this would be disseminated, so let's say that it was a system where you do this or you get this much amount of money. Well, who gets what? Because I guarantee you, a lot of these sleazy so-called black leaders that we have, you don't think they're not going to have their hand in the pot? You don't think Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton or one of these niggas, like, you think that they're not going to have their hand in the pot? Say, well, I have a big congregation. I represent a lot of black people, so I think, and I'm not doing an impression. I'm horrible with impressions. I don't know if you saw my white boy impression. I think it was in part 1, but I'm really bad at them, right? But so at the same time, going back to the point, you think that these people are seriously going to sit there and give some bum on the street the same amount of money that they're going to give Jesse Jackson, you think that you think Al Sharpton is going to get the same amount of money that, you know, some, you know, I hate using like the Tyrone thing, but little Tyrone on the court, like, do you think that that's going to happen? Hell no. These people at the top, our so-called leaders, are gonna find some way to get a bigger piece of the pie because, well, we represent black people, and if we got the money, then we can set up more programs and we can do things a lot better and we can da 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 da. And well, yeah, well, you know, it makes sense. I mean, I think that if we da da da, do you see what I'm saying? It would be disastrous. So they would be getting more money. And somehow we'd find ourselves in a similar situation. And at the same time, a lot of these, I'll say a lot of these lower class blacks that let's say they do go to these, let's say like you are a pastor, a Creflo Dollar or something like that, and you do end up going to one of these mega churches or whatever, you don't think that our people would not pimp the absolute shit out of our own people? Whoo! If you don't think Creflo, like if they said, all right, Creflo, you get 100 million, all black people, you get 1 million, whatever. You don't think that all the black people in Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever that go to Creflo's church, you don't think that he's going to say, well, God has blessed you and you got to put your seed in and you tithe, and even then tithing in and of itself, I don't want to get into that's a whole nother, but you don't think that they're not going to give him that money? You don't think that he's going to find a way to still get yet more richer on top of the increasing cost of everything else, which even then from the whole tax and thing, like the dollar value would probably lower more because of it. Because I think we talked about the Federal Reserve a little bit. But yeah, in order to do it, they're also going to have to print more money. So the more money they print, the value would go down. Everything would, like, explain to me how this would work. I say that it can't. Based on this, I'm not saying that it's not owed. I'm not saying that it's something that in a weird way, like I'm not saying that something shouldn't be done, because something absolutely should be done. Absolutely. But it's not what a lot of people think the situation or the solution should be. Here's where we get into the solution. As we said, it's not as simple as taxing white people. It's not as simple as, you know, taking tax dollars or everything like that. Even when we talk about distributing money, things of that nature, not going to work out, not going to be the best thing. So what is the solution? And I don't know, maybe I can put a drum roll in here, but don't fuck up the mic, don't fuck up the mic. The solution in this current culture, climate, condition is free market capitalism. No! Capitalism, the C word, oh my God, how could you say that? Simple. Because it is the solution, right? We said the biggest reason for why slavery persisted in the first place is government. The biggest reason why reparations can't happen the way that, you know, reparations can't happen in the classical sense of what it means is because of government, right? So the best way to ensure that, you know, black people get their fair due on the whole is to take government out of the equation. Makes sense, right? So how would this work, right? On the whole, that means that I say two things. There's a couple of solutions. I'd say if you start up, like let's say if you want to start up a black-owned business, you can't get taxed for it. If it's a black-owned business, there cannot be federal. I don't know about the state level, and this is just a raw thought here. I mean, it's not all worked out. But don't tax it. That way, it would encourage more black people to start up their own businesses. At the same time, for a business, your biggest expense is your tax bill. So, if it's one of those things where if that is removed, then a lot of black people would be more incentivized to make their own, start up their own businesses, do their own things. I'd also say if you work for a company and let's say that over half or 75% of your employees are black or African American or what have you, then you get either you get your tax bill waived or you get a significant decrease. And I say that because that would incentivize more people to, you wouldn't even have to worry about affirmative action or anything of that nature. There would be an incentive to want to hire the qualified black person. I mean, at the same time, if you're a company and you're worth your salt, then, even you're not going to hire somebody that's going to lose you money. So you're not just, even then a lot of people are, well, they're just going to hire, like, no, because if someone is not qualified, you understand that is going to lose you money regardless. If you don't understand that, then you probably won't be in business very long, or you're not doing business to the best, potential that your business can be. So those are a couple of things that might even, bring some jobs back from overseas, where, now companies are like, well, shit, it'd be less expensive to produce things here if we hire African Americans to do it for, because now we don't have to worry about this heavy tax burden, and there still are plenty of qualified black people to do a lot of these jobs. Right? But at the same time, the main thing that would be pushed for would be to have black people start up and maintain and do their own businesses. That would be the solution. Also, if we talk about, then some people would say, well, wait a minute. If we're not taxing them, if we're not taxing the businesses, then, how does everybody, because at the same time, like, I get it. How would everybody benefit? Well, you'd still have to pay taxes on your personal income. I feel. You would only not tax the thing that is producing for the person that is, that's setting up the business, that type of thing. I know that's kind of confusing, but it's still fairly simple. You don't tax black businesses, and at the same time, but not only would it help black people, it would still help other people, because the thing is, black people would be producing more. America would still be producing more. We'd be producing more products. We'd be producing more services. We'd be, providing more services that in the long run helps everybody. Right? I mean, that's kind of the way that this thing works. So the more that we produce, the more that we provide, the more people that we can, the more employees that we can help get paid, right? So, their taxes will go up and everything of that nature. But at the same time, if we have more people producing, more people providing, then that means we have less people relying on the government for assistance. All right? And I'd say take it a step further, and over time, obviously not immediately, maybe a 40-year, maybe 20-year, whatever grace period, but there should come a time when, like I say, we remove government completely from the equation. Now, maybe I say completely, but if you want to say limited, okay, that's fine. I understand it. We're still citizens and still entitled to some things being citizens within this country. So I'd say after a certain point, black people don't get government assistance. They don't get welfare. And I'll make a video as to why that's a great thing for black people. But on the whole, we wouldn't be taking anymore. We would just be in a position where we would be giving. And so, like I say, I think I said in part one that I provide some historical references, that type of thing, and it has been done. We have done this. I mean, if we look at Tulsa, Oklahoma. We look at Black Wall Street. It was a Black Wall Street, and I'm not gonna go into the whole thing. I might do another series on this, but it was pretty much a town set up by black people for black people, FUBU black people, right? And the money circulated within the black community. Black doctors, black lawyers, black everything. Everything was encased and enclosed, and not encased. It was that way because of segregation, right? It's not like, but we did for our own. We set up our own businesses, and it was very successful. I think the dollar went around the black community 19 times before it bounced out. There were white people in white communities that would come to black banks to get loans. People would come to black establishments to have this happen, and at the same time, no or little, I'll say no welfare, but hey, I'll just, to be politically correct, little welfare, no welfare. I just can't let that go. Black businesses, black people employing black people, all this other stuff, and it worked. It happened. Now, what happened from there? Obviously, white people got mad. They bombed it. We rebuilt, and then it just, okay, that's the whole thing. But it has happened. Free market capitalism is literally the thing that we gravitated towards and we thrived at. And since that time, I mean, now the more government intervention that we have, the worse off that we're doing. And even then, I guess that's kind of a reason why I lean a little bit, I don't want to get political here, but why I leaned a little bit more towards Trump than Hillary, because with Hillary, government would get bigger, and that means they'd be more invasive into our lives. And at the same time, if we did reparations this way, as far as, free market capitalism and things like that, also I'd say this would also incentivize a lot more loans to black businesses, which, or black people and black businesses, which would help bolster the economy. And there's a lot of upsides here. The only thing that would stop something like there's a lot of things that could stop something like this from working, but if there's enough black people that want to work and get this shit done, which I do know there is, then this can happen. But probably somewhere down the line, I'm gonna do a much more detailed, thing about this. This is kind of just off the cuff, but we'll get back to it. I mean, it's a good thing that this is an ongoing conversation. So, with that, hey, I am Troy Mason. Please, let's dialogue, let's engage, let's interact. If you got something that you want to say, if you have suggestions, ideas, if you're just like, you're complete bullshit and you're a Uncle Tom white supremacist, well then, fuck you too. But, that's what I think the solution is. But go on ahead, follow me on all the links. Mainly on Instagram. You can get me on Twitter, Facebook. I think I have a Snapchat too, which I'm never really on. Go to the link below. Let's change the world. All right. Peace. Peace.
The dick was good. But it's the only problem though. She said the dick was so good that as she started rocking, she just got into it, and all of a sudden she said something just hit her. Bam! All upside his head. Just slapped him. Dick will make you slap somebody. So y'all need to remember that. That's what I'm trying to deal with. The fact.
More like constipated, cause you know I do not take shit.
Are you sure about
Maybe
that?
give shit. Give this misfit, like a small condom on this dick. Words are like bullets, and my bullets go ballistic. Beat hit hard, Ray Lewis, hold a hit stick.
You gon' get this work, nigga.